As we approach the NHL trade deadline, all eyes are on the Ottawa Senators and their big three pending unrestricted free agents. There's a lot of talk going on right now and a lot of rumors circulating that the Winnipeg Jets and the Ottawa Senators have had excessive trade talks, and there could be a blockbuster trade coming between those two teams. Plus, we also have some information on the Toronto Maple Leafs continuing their search for another depth defenseman. Plus, we also have some players on waivers today as well. We'll get into all the latest coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, we have a lot to cover today, mostly the big three pending unrestricted free agents for the Ottawa Senators, But first, let's cover off a couple quick items here first before we get into the main part of the video. We do have some news from the NHL waiver wire today. Brandon Manning, who was with the Edmonton Oilers, has cleared, so he has now been assigned to their minor league affiliate in the American Hockey League. And we have a bunch of new players on waivers today as well, including veteran Patrik Laine of the Anaheim Ducks. Now, as we know, Patrik Laine has battled a lot in the past couple of years, mostly illness as well as some injury, and he's only been limited between last season and this season to only 9 NHL games. With hardly any points being put up. And of course, with the Ducks really free-falling as of late, they're really trying their best to kind of make some roster moves and really plan for the future here. And obviously, Patrik Laine might not be a part of that if they can help it. So he has been placed on waivers. So obviously, Patrik Laine is a longtime NHL veteran. I doubt with the amount of time he's missed in the past couple of years that any NHL teams bite on picking him up. But it does give them the ability to send him down probably for the remainder of the season, the American Hockey League, if he's able to play down there, and see what happens beyond that. But Patrik Laine is available on waivers. Now, goaltender Michael Leighton, who's now a member of the Vancouver Canucks. Of course, he's a journeyman goaltender, played with a lot of teams, mostly known for his time in the Philadelphia Flyers organization, has played relatively well down in Utica, and he's on waivers here as well today. And we also have Florida Panthers forward Michael Haley on waivers. Haley's pretty much one of the last guys, kind of really known as a fighter who's really in the lineup specifically for that. In my opinion, Michael Haley does not do a lot of things well. He is tough, he can fight, and really he's probably one of the last enforcers really in the NHL that's designated on the roster specifically to be in that role. So we'll see. He more than likely doesn't get claimed either, but then again, an NHL playoff team very well might take a chance to add some grit for the playoffs. I'm not too sure that there's a lot of rosters he'd be a regular forward in, but at the same time, it's nice to have that 13th or 14th forward available who they could insert into the lineup in certain situations. So he very well might get claimed. You just never know, but in my opinion, it's doubtful. More than likely, all three of these guys claim, but there are some potential suitors out there who could have a look at these guys and see if there's anything interesting here to make a claim. Now, as I mentioned as well, the Toronto Maple Leafs are still reportedly looking for some depth defense, preferably on the right side. Obviously, as we know, they acquired Jake Muzzin here a few weeks back, which was a fairly substantial move for them, giving up their first-round pick. So more than likely, any additional moves they make is going to require some salary to go out, or whatever's coming back has to be fairly minor. They're not going to be trading any additional first-round picks. They already traded 2019. They're not expected to trade at 2020 or anything beyond that. They don't want to be giving up too much for the future. There is some other prospects that could be considered to be moved. It is expected that they wouldn't want to move guys like Rasmus Sandin or Timothy Liljegren as well. Even Calle Rosen's having a fantastic year in the American Hockey League, one of the top defenders down there, putting up a lot of points. So they very well might give him a look here before the end of the season as well. I highly doubt any of those guys are going to be traded. There have been some suggestions they should be taking a look at Adam McQuaid of the New York Rangers. Of course, a longtime Boston Bruin. Recently went to the New York Rangers early this season. He's been playing a fair amount of minutes for the Rangers, averaging, I think it's about 17 minutes per game. Really, his overall underlying numbers are not fantastic. I'm really not sure that McQuaid's what the Leafs need. From one aspect, though, he does bring that grit and toughness and physicality that I know a lot of Leaf fans want to see on that blue line. So from that point of view, he would be a good fit, but overall, I just think his overall defensive play isn't real solid, and I think in some ways he might make that decor worse instead of better. Nick Jensen might be a better option in some ways. I mean, he's having a fairly quietly decent season in Detroit as well, but there might even be other options out there better as well. But those are the two guys, according to TSN, that they kind of been linked to or should be taking a look at least. So let me know your thoughts if the Leafs should be going after either of those two defensemen, or they really should be going down other avenues. For me, McQuaid's a no. Jensen, maybe, of course, it might not be too bad of a fit, but I think there might be some other options out there that might better fit what they're looking for, in my opinion. Now jumping over to the main part of today's video, all eyes are on the Ottawa Senators and the big decisions coming on their big three pending unrestricted free agents. Of course, we're talking about Mark Stone, Matt Duchene, and Ryan Dzingel. To a lesser extent, Dzingel certainly getting some interest here, but Stone and Duchene generating much more. Now, it's been reported here that the Jets and the Senators are being speculated to have some pretty extensive trade talks. Of course, the Senators were in Winnipeg not long ago, and it was spotted here. I'll put some information from Twitter up on the screen, where Kevin Cheveldayoff and Pierre Dorion were seen having long conversations. After the conversation ended, Dorion was seen having a long phone conversation shortly thereafter. Mark Chipman of the Jets ownership group was obviously also present as well. So certainly a lot of speculation going on about what they could have been talking about. It appears as though that they do have interest, according to Bruce Garriock of the Ottawa Sun, that they have all interest in all three of the Senators' pending UFAs. Now, there was some talk that maybe one, two, or even all three could possibly be dealt in a blockbuster trade, although that is very unlikely in my opinion. I do think the one that they are eyeing the most is Mark Stone. Now, it's also being reported by Darren Dreger of TSN that the Senators have gone back to Stone's camp with another contract extension proposal here in the past few days, with some creativity around the length of term and an increased AAV as well. So they're really making another solid effort here to sign Mark Stone, give that camp some serious things to think about, and it's expected that Stone likely lets the Senators know here probably in the next 24 to 48 hours if he's willing to continue negotiating, if he's willing to sign, or possibly if he's saying, you know what, I'm done negotiating, we're not going to talk about this any further to the end of the season. And if that's the case, then they likely would move him so they don't risk losing him for nothing. I mean, if they feel like they put their best foot forward and he's not signing now, then that's unlikely to change during the offseason when they'd be at risk to not get any assets in return. Of course, Stone is a Winnipeg native as well. He would be a great fit on just about any team going into a playoff hunt. He does so many things well. He's a very versatile forward. Really underrated in my opinion, especially when it comes to like the Selke Award. Mark Stone's got an incredible stick, great hand-eye coordination. He can pick off a lot of passes, really strong defensively, and really solid offensively as well. I think he'd make any contender that much stronger, and the Jets appear to be zoning in on him quite hard. Now, the information we have suggests that if Stone does re-sign in Ottawa, or if the deal just doesn't seem to work for Ottawa's perspective, that they very well might look at Duchene or Dzingel, but I do think Stone's the main one they're looking for, with Dzingel likely being a second possibility. Not that they wouldn't like Matt Duchene, but he's believed to have some other teams way more interested in him. So I do think it's possible Duchene could go to Winnipeg, but I don't think it's nearly as likely. I think they really want Stone, which kind of makes the most sense for them here, in my opinion, as well. Now, of course, when it comes to Mark Stone and a potential trade to Winnipeg, there was some people speculating online that they very well might be looking to include Patrik Laine from Winnipeg going back to Ottawa, which would be a fantastic return for the Senators. As much as I love Mark Stone as a player and think he's great for Ottawa, Laine would be an absolutely tremendous acquisition. I do think, though, that that's highly speculative and very unlikely. I can't imagine Winnipeg making that kind of a blockbuster deal here at the deadline. I mean, Laine's a pending RFA. He's been in a slump lately, yes, but just not sure that that's where they're going. Now, I think the reason why that name came up as a potential player being involved in the deal here is just because of the long conversations, the fact that ownership on Winnipeg's side was involved, Dorion having long conversations as well. I just don't see that being the case. I think more than likely the reason that all those other things were happening, if anything, if the reports are true, is that they're probably talking about an extension for Mark Stone. Mark Stone very well would probably want to go to Winnipeg with an extension in place, would be my guess. And the Jets very well might use Ottawa to do a sign and trade type of deal where they work out the contract extension and then do the trade and give up a little bit more, which would be good for Ottawa as well if they'd make that move because they'll get a better return. So hard to say. There's all kinds of speculation going on. We really won't know exactly what's going down and what all the potential deals are until we come up to the deadline or something actually takes place here. But there is a lot of chatter around the Jets and Senators working on some potential big trades here that could involve some big names. Now, outside of the Mark Stone to Winnipeg rumors, like I said, we also have Matt Duchene and Ryan Dzingel talk as well. I believe as many as 5 or 6 other teams are making serious inquiries on Duchene, mainly being the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Nashville Predators, and the New York Islanders. Now, it's believed that the main way the Columbus would want to acquire Duchene is if they end up trading Artemi Panarin. So between Panarin, Duchene, and Stone, they're really holding up the trade market here. Many teams are kind of waiting to see what happens and to see who's available and what the deals are going going to be. There's a lot of other, fairly good names on the trade bait board, but they're not likely going to move until the shoe drops here. One of the bigger names go. So should Columbus find a deal for Panarin, he might very well be the first to go, which could then trigger a deal where they pick up a guy like Duchene or somebody else who's also a big-time scorer and can replace that offense here heading into the playoffs. But if you take a look at a deal for Duchene going to Columbus, I'm not really sure that they're going to be able to give up as great of an offer as some of the other teams. I mean, it's believed that they probably want to include Alex Wennberg. And if I'm Ottawa, I'm not taking that contract. He's got 4 more years at just shy of $5 million. He really hasn't been producing at a good rate, in my opinion. He's, a decent number 2, but not really a great number 2 center. A lot of teams, he'd probably be a number 3 guy. Really, a couple of years ago, he put up, I think it was close to 60 points, but he's really dropped off since then. I think that deal is be way too risky for them to take Wennberg back. I mean, if you take a look at what else they could have to offer, I mean, there's just not a lot of other big-time prospects in their system. I mean, Liam Foudy might be of interest, maybe a Sonny Milano. I don't know. I just don't see a lot of big-time prospects that would really jump out for Ottawa as to pull the trigger. Of course, they'd include their first-round pick more than likely as well. But I just don't know if there's a great fit there. I mean, unless there's some other assets that came back in a Panarin deal that then they could flip over for Duchene, which is completely unknown at this time. So that very well might be what they'd have to do. I think not only for them to make sense to acquire Duchene, but to have the proper assets to make the acquisition would have to involve Panarin going out. And obviously he'd bring back a good haul and they could flip all or most of that over to Ottawa or something to that nature. We could see another, maybe a 3-way deal as well, kind of like we saw with Nashville, Ottawa, and Colorado. Not that long ago when Duchene first went to Ottawa, which is kind of a head-scratcher when you think about everything that's gone down really ever since then. Of course, you look at the Nashville Predators, they could very well include a first-round pick, maybe a top prospect like Eeli Tolvanen, and maybe something off the roster, maybe like a Kevin Fiala or something like that. That very well might be enough to get the deal done. That'd be a decent return, I think, for Duchene going to Nashville. Of course, you look at the Islanders. I think you can't count out Lou Lamoriello. The Islanders are having a phenomenal year without John Tavares. They're in first place, and Islander fans certainly love to remind everybody that they're in first place. They're having a great year. Great stories in goal with Robin Lehner and Thomas Greiss certainly having a bounce-back season as well. They do have a lot of interesting prospect on Long Island between guys like Kiefer Bellows, Noah Dobson, Bodie Wild. Of course, you get their first-round pick as well. So when you look at those 3 prospects, the first-round pick, maybe something else off the roster. I would think defenseman like a Ryan Pulock might be of interest, although I doubt the Islanders would want to move him. But either way, they do have enough younger pieces. I think the Islanders could make a very, very competitive offer for a guy like Matt Duchene. Obviously, the Islanders have made out just fine without Tavares, but adding a guy like Duchene would certainly replace a lot of that offense and would make them even that much more stronger heading into the playoffs. Not only to go in potentially here as a division winner, but have that much more of ability here to make some noise and have a chance to win a round or two and really be a competitive force down the stretch here. So should be some very interesting times. We're now less than a week away to the NHL trade deadline coming up on February the 25th. That's going to be an incredibly busy day. It is possible we might see a substantial deal or two go down ahead of time. Although I do think a lot of this is going to come down to the wire here. And, with the deadline being next Monday, maybe you could see something bigger on the weekend, 1 or 2 days out. But I don't think we're going to see a whole lot between now and then. There's going to be a lot of negotiating around contract extensions, and a lot of decisions need to be made on who's going to be available and who's not. And then, of course, trade negotiations going on at the same time. So buckle up. I think we're in store for an incredibly busy weekend and an incredibly busy next Monday. There's going to be lots of movement, all kinds of big names, likely changing uniforms here. Could change the landscape of the NHL and really set things up for an exciting playoffs here coming up for 2019. So stay tuned. We'll be back here with more updates as all the information becomes available, and we have much more to discuss. If you're new to the channel, hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you do, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up before you go. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.